Okay. Can everyone see me? Okay. Just to confirm, producer, is this the same link or do I have to pull up a new link? Okay. This is the same stream. Can I now be seen? Hope everybody can see me right now. Everything looking good? All right. Once again, I apologize for all this. Once again, folks, just want to be 100% clear. Very sorry about these technical issues. Who knows? Maybe we're being jammed right now. Maybe there's somebody who's seen a UFO and they are eager to share their experience, and somebody doesn't want them to share it. Difficult to tell. Will Robinson talking about Tenerife. Yeah, that's an awful issue that had nothing to do with UFOs. Had to do with massive human stupidity and massive human error way back in the 1970s. So, in any event, horrible. Many hundreds of people killed in the worst aviation accident in history. But we're not talking about the Tenerife incident. Hello, Daniel. Hello back to you in Germany. We have 100 people signed on right now. Can't see my glasses. Restart the stream. Yes, indeed. I am actually still. I waited until I came back to the UK to get myself some new glasses. I can see well enough to function without them. However, yeah, I definitely need to get some more glasses. And apparently, from what I've been told, you can get them a lot cheaper here in Britain. So that's what I'm setting about doing. Okay. So parents and I were in New York when this crash happened, says Carl. Yeah, awful. Well, hello, Damien in Clifton. Appreciate you being here. Hello, Northumberland. Okay, so once again, back to the topic at hand. When so Avi Loeb, he once he dredged up these spherules. To reiterate, we're talking about Avi Loeb, the Galileo project, what they found off the coast of New Guinea. These spherules that are usually associated with meteorite impacts, but the composition did not correspond to what was usually in a meteor. So that being the case, there were as a result, there was a lot of news that came out not that long ago that came into that was very, I don't know, very critical. So, like, let me give you an example of the level of criticality that was introduced here. Okay, so, and by the way, this is off of a magazine called Root here. Just giving you an example. The small spheres found a few months ago by the team of researchers led by Avi Loeb did not have alien origin, not even extraterrestrial. Okay, this is what the article is saying, that they weren't the product of a meteorite impact. They're saying it very certainly that what Avi Loeb found, what his researchers spent a long time going over with a fine-tooth comb, investigating the components, investigating the constituent materials, said that they did not have an alien origin, not even extraterrestrial. A new study suggests that these strange objects found at the bottom of the sea could be coal ash from industry. All right. By the way, it just doesn't seem to. Planetary science expert Monica Grady, who in an article in The Conversation explained that it was too early to rule out the possibility that the origin of the spherules found was something as mundane as industrial pollution. Okay, maybe too soon to rule it out, but that doesn't mean that's definitely the case. Regarding the chemical analysis of the samples, and this is according to the Cavalli Institute for Physics of Cosmology at the University of Chicago. Gallardo studies based on the data published by Loeb, which indicates that the spheres contain relatively high amounts of three elements: beryllium, lanthanum, and uranium. The composition of these objects is certainly unusual for a meteorite. The problem is obvious. No one is given the spatial origin of these objects. Okay, so what they have is the composition of the spherules does not coincide with that of meteors that reach our planet, but it is consistent with a contamination. That's a strange way of wording it. Present in the ashes generated by the combustion of coal. Researchers point out in an article published by the journal Research Notes of the American Astronomical Society that this fact seems to favor the hypothesis that the origin of these spheres is on our own planet. Occam's razor is the idea that the simplest answer tends to be the correct one. That these spherules are the product of industrial pollution seems a more plausible hypothesis than they are the product of an extraterrestrial spacecraft. In any case, new analyses, okay, that's misspelled too, will be necessary to confirm one hypothesis or another. But this is just one example of the articles that have been emerging about this whole thing, about the discovery of these spherules and whether or not they came from Earth or if they came from off planet. Now, I'm not going to talk about whether or whose side is true here. Instead, what I'm going to say is the amount of criticism that has been piled on top of Avi Loeb because of the way he released this information has been brutal. It has been beyond nasty. And the reason is Avi Loeb tried to publish his results in peer-reviewed journals and was rejected. These peer-reviewed journals and part of the mainstream scientific community and the peer review process refused to publish what he had because they said there wasn't sufficient proof. Although they did publish the results that said that it was just common coal ash. All right. Apparently, there was sufficient proof as far as they were concerned on that particular hypothesis. But regardless, since these peer-reviewed journals wouldn't publish it, what Avi Loeb was supposed to do was keep his mouth shut and say, well, okay, I guess I need to get more proof, or maybe just give the whole thing up and not say anything. But what he did instead is publish the study and go to the public with the results and with his opinions. And the anger in the scientific community was palpable. And you can pick this up in these various articles. It's just beyond frustrating. Here's another one. Alien spherules dredged from the Pacific, probably just industrial pollution. Boy, I wish I could find the one that really annoys the hell out of me, because that's the one that I find to be the most frustrating. Oh, yes, sir. First ever alien objects found on Earth debunked as scientists offer a major new theory. Scientists, that's one thing that these articles like to do. They like to call them scientists. Even though there are other scientists who've been involved with this research and actually spent many months investigating the bottom of the ocean, researching and studying these spherules and determining their chemical composition. No, because the only people who actually are legitimate scientists are the ones who are debunking it. The article writers were not part of the Galileo team, says Michael Maxey, or the military unit that claimed to identify Loeb's spherules. The article is based on the opinions of non-professionals. Very good point, Michael. Very good point indeed. So here's what the scientific community was outraged. Here we go. This is, by the way, from the Mirror, which is not the greatest article to be quoting from, but I think they hit some points on the head. They say the scientific community was outraged earlier this year when a Harvard physicist claimed to have found the first ever objects to land on the Earth that had originated outside the solar system. Professor Avi Loeb claimed that the small spherules that he recovered from the Pacific Ocean were, in fact, from a meteor that had traveled between star systems. The professor analyzed the composition of the spherules. By the way, it wasn't just the professor. As a matter of fact, he wasn't involved in the investigation as the analysis of the spherules much at all, because he's not a chemist. He's an astrophysicist. He engaged chemists all over the world, not just at Harvard University, a very respected institution, by the way. But on top of that, he also engaged chemists from elsewhere. And he also suggested they could be the remnants of an extraterrestrial craft. Other scientists were less than convinced, criticizing Loeb's claims as lacking conclusive evidence. A new study has gone further to discredit the scientist, alleging the fragments are nothing more than coal ash. University of Chicago physicist Patricio Gallardo penned the research, which said that the fragments point to contamination from terrestrial sources. In the new paper published in the research notes of the AAS, which, by the way, a peer-reviewed journal. So in other words, the peer review process said that Avi Loeb was invalid, but what this guy was publishing was valid. The meteoric origin is disfavored. Few comparisons to the contaminants have been conducted to discard the null hypothesis of terrestrial contamination. His research found that the spherules were analyzed and found to contain three elements: beryllium, lanthanum, uranium. The initial Harvard study said the amount of lanthanum and uranium were 500 times more than the amount found in terrestrial rocks. I'll tell you, it is just frustrating to read this stuff. Contents of nickel, beryllium, lanthanum, and uranium are examined in the context of a known anthropogenic, in other words, human-made source of contamination, and found to be consistent with coal ash. He also referenced a 1976 naval expedition to the Gulf of Mexico, where magnetic spherules were discovered in seawater, all from human-made sources. Chemical composition and analyses revealed consistency with coal fly ash, waste product of the combustion of coal in power plants and steam engines. University of Oxford astrophysicist Professor Chris Lintott, who is not involved in either study, said that Loeb's claims are most likely nonsense. Now, okay, did you hear what I just said? He was not involved in either study, and that there's no convincing evidence that what's been found is interstellar. Once again, he was not involved in either study. There's loads we can learn from studying meteorites, and we've even spotted a couple interstellar objects, but this isn't the way to do it, and it's certainly not aliens. Okay, and this is just one of many, many, many articles that were published absolutely lambasting Avi Loeb. Now, since that time, the Galileo Project and Avi Loeb have responded, and many of them have pointed out that the spherules that were very thoroughly investigated, very thoroughly analyzed, contained a wide variety of different elements, not just the few that were described in the study, elements that don't correspond to coal ash. In addition to that, a mining engineer involved in the expedition, the head of mining engineering in Papua New Guinea, who was, by the way, the meteor crashed off the coast of Papua New Guinea. That's why he was involved in the particular study. He's that there should be coal contamination in this area. So there's Michael. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Any professional chemist will tell you that terrestrial coal ash is soluble in water. Good point, Michael. Really good point. So, it's just, those things are for our problems already in this analysis. But on top of that, what has never been described is how the hell did these spherules, if they are indeed pollutants, if they are indeed industrial contaminants, how did they end up only in the impact site, the suspected impact site where the meteor or whatever it was came down? Why did they show up there and not in a test area outside of the impact site, which was also dredged thoroughly, where no spherules were found whatsoever? Did we have, nefarious industrial pollutants who were on their way out and just decided to dump it right there in order to confound future researchers? Nobody ever explains why it turned out that way. Why did these spherules, if they are indeed industrial pollutants, why did they only show up there? Perhaps there is some sort of logical reason, but nobody seems to have brought it up yet. And in spite of these huge inconsistencies, the massive holes in this theory, So many people in the scientific community and in mainstream media have declared that this theory's been debunked, that the spherals have been decidedly identified, blah, blah, blah. And Avi Loeb is being absolutely roasted in the scientific community and in the popular media as being a complete quack. Popsu, thank you so much for the $2. And once again, Michael, thank you so much for the $10. So, again, is the stigma alive and well? Hell yes, it is. Most definitely. If an individual who was once a highly respected astrophysicist at Harvard University, he was indeed actually the head of the department for 10 years, if even he cannot hold up, if his reputation isn't enough to protect him from vehement criticism, then what hope does anybody else have, right? Because the others that have come forward, the three gentlemen who, including David Grush and others who came forward in front of Congress, they have been also subjected to some vehement criticism in the popular media, online, or just with people in general. And it's frustrating. And what this does, the consequences, and the reason why I'm talking about this, the consequences of this kind of behavior is you have an environment where serious astronomers, serious astrophysicists, people who work for NASA, anybody who wants to maintain their credibility as a scientific professional had better keep their mouths shut about this issue. They better not say a damn thing about it. And that is a toxic environment. That's an environment that discourages, it's the complete antithesis to the type of environment that we want to have if we really want to find out the truth about these objects, whatever that truth might be. So once again, oh boy, we have over 200 people watching now. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Really do appreciate it. Out of everybody watching, has anybody seen a UFO? Has anyone on this stream seen? I'm sorry, go ahead. And 66% of those. Yeah, go ahead. Now that we have a lot more people, producer, now that we have a lot more people watching, let's go ahead and run the poll again. Have you ever seen a UFO? If so, can you give me a couple details about what happened? Because I never have. So yeah, I would say definitely most people have not. Sergeant Rock, have you seen one? It looks like yes, says Jeremy Galloway, when he was about 12. Interesting. Yes, either we are not alone in the universe or we are alone in the universe, and both are completely terrifying. Very true. If we are indeed alone in the universe, that also suggests two possibilities. Number one, that life has a really hard time developing, that intelligent life especially has an incredibly difficult time developing if we are indeed alone, which means that our own civilization and our species is unique and precious and super valuable and also super vulnerable, because any number of cataclysms could take us out. And if they did take us out, then that would be the end of intelligence in the universe. What do you call science that ridicules inquiry? Religion. Yes, indeed. Whether it's a UFO or not, saw large triangles has landed Abrasax. Interesting. Let's see. Plant watering citizen has seen something. Rex Rocker, maybe. Karen Crothers says that he has. Oumuamua likely an interstellar survey skin planning a new transstellar shipping lane. The Earth is in the way and needs to be removed. Energize the demolition beam. Bloody ignorant planet. Got no sympathy for you at all. Okay, for those of you familiar with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. One night in the UK, I saw a light move across the sky completely silent. Could have been a stealth helicopter or something else. Chris Law apparently has seen UFOs a few times. Interesting. See, on Independence Day, I saw a whole bunch in Independence Day. 2 times wondering what the heck it was. Yeah, saw one a few years ago, a scrappy triangle with weird paneling, what looked like a blanket of energy under it, distorting it like a heat wave. Well, that sounds intriguing. Hanging out at grandparents during a family night, looked up at night in the field, saw a few crazy lights moving around very quickly, looked at really high altitude. North Florida. I'm sorry. 2%. 2% apparently have seen something. Oh, 42%. 42% say that they have seen a UFO. Wow, that's big numbers. North Florida saw a low silent triangle. Boy, lots of triangles being described here of lights accompanied by an hour of missing time. The missing time phenomenon is especially disconcerting, usually associated with abductions and things like that. The abduction situation is especially disconcerting to me because it suggests that whoever's visiting us also seems to have very little concern for our psychological well-being and is simply willing to snatch one of us up to perform experiments and then plop us back down again. And, if we freak out, we freak out. Go ahead. If we were a species capable of interstellar travel, what would we learn by probing humans? I would say the same thing that we learn by dissecting ants or dissecting cockroaches. It could be just simple biology. It could be that assuming, of course, that abductions happen. It could be that the inhabitants of these craft come from a planet where evolution took a different path, or they could be a machine civilization without any sort of direct contact with intelligent biological organisms for a considerable period of time. Just the interest simply could be purely scientific. They could be silicon-based life forms instead of carbon-based life forms. They could be methanogenic life forms, aliens that breathe methane instead of oxygen. And they might want to learn more about us purely from a biological standpoint. It's disturbing stuff indeed. Socorro in the 80s, in New Mexico 80s, went off in one direction quicker, did a quick 180, sped off at a faster speed. Like I say, I wish I'd seen something like this. And in the days of smartphones, you get a chance to actually film it. Seen lights in the sky disappear in less than a second. Wow. Amazing stuff indeed. Sun was in the sky, saw a star instantly accelerate and streak across 1/8 of the visible horizon before stopping dead, flashing once, south to north. Wow. That's amazing stuff indeed. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. But I think there's going to come a point when we have definitive proof that there's something visiting us, that there's other civilizations besides our own. Once we have that first piece of evidence, once we have that first piece of conclusive proof, and perhaps we've seen it already and we're just not willing to accept it. Perhaps Oumuamua was that piece of evidence and we're just not willing to accept it. Once we've seen it once, then does it become extraordinary claims anymore? Is it extraordinary to think that there are other intelligent species in the galaxy besides ourselves? I would say actually it probably isn't. And I think that we're going to find, hopefully in the near future, especially now that all of us have one of these things, I think that we are going to find very soon that these claims were never that extraordinary. that the idea, the notion that other species, other civilizations exist in our galaxy and in the universe. Some of them may even come to pay us a visit. We're never that extraordinary at all. Michael, thank you so much for the $10. Alien interest with humans could include biological reproductive system. Cloning has its limitations. DNA degradation. That's a very interesting point. Las Vegas UFO crash. Perhaps you know something? Oh, you mean, are you referring to the to that flash of light and then the people who said that they saw aliens in their backyard? That particular incident that allegedly happened in Las Vegas. Okay, so here's what I think about that. All the visual evidence that I have seen thus far from security cameras, that sort of thing, strongly suggests that that was a meteor of some kind. And, I'm not saying that the people who said they saw aliens poking around their backyard are liars or anything like that, but it's very possible that an event like that, a dramatic event like that, a meteor that lights up the sky so dramatically can also light up the imagination. Or it may have also lit up the imagination of people who like to pull pranks on others. Remember, we live in a time where people have lots of elaborate costumes. Cosplaying is a very common thing in Las Vegas. After seeing that bright flash of light, perhaps a few kids decided, hey, let's go scare the shit out of some people. I would say that, in my opinion, based on what we know about that particular event, I would say that that is almost certainly a meteor and, a close encounter of the third kind that was driven either by hyperactive imaginations or by people dressed up as aliens. I really don't think. Oh, I apologize. Okay. Oh boy, now I need to watch my language. Wow. Okay. Well, I will. Oh, we've got an 8-year-old child watching. I'm sorry. I didn't know that. Okay. Yes, I will try to scale down my language a bit. Um, my poor kids got to listen to too much bad language at the time as well. So yeah, that's my opinion about the Las Vegas incident. Somebody also mentioned that it is the liars that create a lot of the stigma. And yeah, that's true, because obviously the vast majority of these incidents are not true. Obviously, the vast majority of these incidents are misidentifications of meteors, of satellites, of aircraft, of swamp gas. Hear that one all the time. Of ball lightning. There are many, many strange phenomena in our natural world that can be misinterpreted as extraterrestrial craft. No question about it. That is the vast majority of it, but still not all of them. Antonym says, they shout out to all friends and supporters. You make this possible. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Want to make sure that a few people have already done some super chats, by the way, during this broadcast. Really appreciate that, because, by the way, I just hammered out my estimated budget for going to Cape Canaveral to take the liftoff of Vulcan Centaur. It's going to be about $700. Just so you know, I am not expecting you guys to support that. All right. You guys have done so much for me already, and, to get me out to Boca Chica and all that. I am content to cover that event remotely, even though obviously it's an important event for me personally. Because of the 100K challenge. But nevertheless, this is not something I need to go cover unless you guys really want me to, because you've done a lot to support me already. If it's something you really want me to do, all the details are in the description for Patreon and PayPal. But that's entirely up to you as to whether or not you'd like to be involved with that. But Vulcan Centaur isn't UFO stuff. So, even though the government has been going out on a limb, talking a lot about eliminating the stigma, about encouraging people to report these incidents, especially, pilots, one of the big ones, right? Military officials or just military personnel in general, government employees, people who work on the border. And by the way, we've had all kinds of UFO footage now that's been submitted from the military, has been submitted from border patrol. All the Department of Energy has submitted a lot of footage. It's great. I'm glad that all of that is happening now. However, the stigma most definitely still exists. It is a smothering, a numbing stigma that becomes obvious every time a story comes out. Every time a claim comes out about the government. Oh, Dr. Stephen Greer, thank you. I mentioned it was just made of that. Every time we have any sort of report about UFOs, any sort of claim about the fact that the government may be covering up some information about UAPs. By the way, the government themselves have admitted that they haven't shown us everything, that they haven't revealed everything, because so much of the footage that they take of UAPs involves the use of highly sophisticated surveillance equipment, and they don't want to reveal that equipment's capabilities. So they themselves admit that. Also, allegedly, the government has lots of UAP footage that looks way better than the stuff that they have given us already. Once again, they're not going to let us see it because that would reveal the capabilities of their surveillance equipment. It's frustrating as hell. They haven't even shown this stuff to NASA, by the way. That's something they should at least do. They should at least reveal some of this classified information to people with high security clearances at NASA, but they most definitely are not. The UFOs seem to have had a great interest in our military. That is also true. Whether, at least as far as we know, there have been more than one incident where UFOs have paid a great deal of attention to our nuclear assets, deactivated ICBMs. Once again, we don't have independent confirmation of this. All we have is the testimony of individuals who worked at these facilities. We don't have anything else confirming that this has actually happened. And again, for good reason. I don't think the military ever wants to admit that that our nuclear arsenal could be flipped off like a light switch. But if these folks are to be believed, UFOs can definitely do that. And I can see why extraterrestrial visitors would want to experiment with that, because nuclear weapons would probably present a serious threat to their craft, and they want to test their ability to make them harmless. Let's see, strip program rated PG, parental guidance suggested. Thank you very much. Really do appreciate that. Gordon Cooper is on record on video stating he saw a film of a UFO. Where is that film? Good point. Oh, yeah, the Roswell situation. First, it was a weather balloon. Decades later, it's advanced weather balloon. One thing is abundantly clear. Whatever it was not any sort of weather balloon. That is probably true. Ooh, we've just lost the image. Producer? Are you seeing that? Okay, so I got some sort of issue on my screen, but apparently nothing with you guys. Everything looks good to everybody. Good. I'm very glad to hear that. So here's the thing. It's been fashionable. It's been acceptable to criticize those who come forward with UFO stories. It's been a common thing, especially amongst respected scientists, especially amongst respected politicians, especially amongst respected journalists, to attack people who come forward with stories about UFOs. Regardless of whether they be in the military, common people, whatever, scientists like Avi Loeb, It's just been a common thing. And unfortunately, the disease remains. Obviously, the disease remains. In spite of the government's urgings, in spite of organizations like Arrow encouraging people to come forward with their stories, we obviously have many powerful sources in the popular media, in the scientific community, and amongst politicians who call themselves skeptics. But really, what they are is bullies. I mean, how else can we look at it besides that? We're talking about people who are willing to take very flimsy evidence to the contrary of a claim that's being made, whether it be the Phoenix Lights or what Avi Loeb and his colleagues found at the bottom of the ocean, or Oumuamua, or whatever. To take studies, take evidence that's submitted, supposedly debunking these claims, and immediately latch onto it and say, see, we were right. It's not aliens. It was never aliens. And oh boy, these people are nut jobs. They were never real scientists. And oh yeah, they may be military, but all of us know that military, suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder and stuff. So we can't trust anything they have to say. I mean, seriously, I've heard this kind of crap come from these so-called skeptics. It's one thing to be skeptical. It's quite another to be a dismissive bully. And that is precisely what these people are. I want to thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for sharing your stories with me, the individual encounters that you may have had. Like I say, I'm pretty envious. I would have loved to experience something like this myself. Continue to stay tuned. Of course, I'm going to keep the content coming almost on a daily basis. That's how fast and furious it's been happening lately. And once again, if you are interested in me going to cover the Vulcan Centaur launch on Christmas Eve in person, all the details are in the description, but please don't feel obligated to do so. You've done a hell of a lot for me already. And I look forward to talking to you folks again in a week. And until the whole notion, the whole practice of UFO reporting stigma becomes a thing of the past. Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate that last second support there. Until all of this becomes a thing of the past, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.